You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Thanks for letting us be part of your morning. Now again, Catholic Chicago.
Good morning, and welcome to the Voice of Charity. I'm Phil Zapata with Catholic Charities, and we are delighted to be with you here at WNDZ 750 AM in Chicago, as well as our live stream on YouTube and Facebook at Catholic Chicago. So in March of this year, the World Health Organization released a scientific brief stating that in the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic, a global prevalence of anxiety and depression increased by a massive 25%. The brief said that some of the reasons for the increase are, number one, the unprecedented stress caused by fear about the pandemic, of course, right? And two, the social isolation resulting from that. It also cited factors that were consistent in constraints on people's ability to work, and seeking support from loved ones to engage in their communities, right? That complete isolation factor. Now, according to the Center for Disease Control, mental, emotional, and psychological health concerns have risen so much in the past 2 years that this is considered to be a global public health issue. And because of these developments, behavioral health providers around the country are taking a closer look at how they provide services to their clients and the outcomes they're seeing from those treatment plans. And that includes Catholic Charities. At Catholic Charities, our behavioral health programs are tailored to meet client needs where they are at. And our experienced professionals are widely respected for the results that they help clients achieve. Trauma-informed therapy. Trauma-informed therapy is often used to help clients. And here to tell us more about this important topic is Ellen Tannenbaum, our Director of Catholic Charities Youth Counseling Programs. Ellen, so glad to have you on the Voice of Charity. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Phil.
So great. So great to have you here. I want to get momentarily into understanding more what trauma-informed therapy is, but I'd love you to start, if you can talk about the behavioral health programs, the universe of all the different types of programs that Catholic Charities offers that focus on behavioral health.
Well, Catholic Charities offers therapy services to folks ages 3 and older. So for most of the lifespan throughout Cook and Lake counties, our programming is a mix of grant-based funding, which means that it's free for participants. And then we also have programming through your insurance card. And a lot of our clients have Medicaid and access programs at no cost to them through their insurance. Our bread and butter is sort of individual and family therapy, but we also offer some couples work, some domestic violence, substance abuse, and sometimes we can connect families to psychiatric services.
So, Ellen, it's really across the entire the lifespan that we have these touch points for behavioral health programs, which is truly remarkable and something that makes Catholic Charities distinct. I want to get a little bit more into understanding trauma-informed therapy. It's a central way the treatment plans are created with clients. Talk to us a little bit more about this so that we can understand more about this type of therapy.
Well, I think it's useful to sort of talk about what is therapy first. Therapy is trying to provide a safe and confidential space for a person to talk to a professional about their personal experiences, their thoughts, their feelings, or their problems. Trauma-focused therapy and trauma-informed therapy is really a specific approach to therapy that recognizes and emphasizes understanding about a particular traumatic experience or experiences that are affecting somebody's mental and emotional, their spiritual well-being, and maybe their behavior on a day-to-day basis. And the goal of trauma-informed therapy is really to bring somebody back to a feeling of safety. And we want folks to be active in the conversation about what feels important, and what does safety look like for them.
Right, and helping them through conversations and dialogue and through that therapy, work that through and surface those elements. Talk to us about what are some of the examples of trauma that you've heard from clients who come to Catholic Charities for assistance?
This one's a sad question, because we have folks come to us after physical and sexual violence. They come to us after gun violence. We have a partnership with the Chicago Advocacy Center that investigates child sexual abuse. And so after they've been investigated, they're offered therapy services, and we are their primary partner right now, taking a lot of their families, their children, and the parents who've also been traumatized by this event. In our loss program, we're supporting folks who've experienced a suicide in their family. And so the loss program has folks who specialize in supporting children and adults who have survived this kind of trauma. So violence, unfortunately, is a huge piece of the trauma, but sometimes also neglect is. And sometimes it's the absence of needs being met that is another key factor for what brings people to us.
Right. And you mentioned, that is incredibly sad. Ellen, does trauma-informed therapy differ depending on whether the client has experienced trauma recently or further in the past? I'm assuming it would. I was a Red Cross disaster responder at 9/11, more than 20 years ago. And I work with, I worked with individuals who almost now are just coming to terms with some of the trauma and the grief and the burden that they faced back then. But I'd love to hear that temporal or that time frame difference on trauma that happened previously versus trauma that's been more recent.
Well, I think you're doing a great example of sort of talking about how there's a different reaction, right, as we've been hit with the stress of a traumatic event, and then how you may need to process the trauma later because it may mean something different to you. So first, we want to really be assessing, where are you at right now? If we go to, if the event has just happened, then I really want to find out, what is your functioning at this time? How are you grounded in your body? Are you even here? Because many people, they're somewhere else. And so we're going to be working on trying to bring them present into the body, so that they can attend to the things that they need to do every day, take care of their children, or if their children go to school, answer their mom and dad about questions, be safe, hear a car coming. So, I mean, if your dissociation is, which we call it when you sort of leave your body, is very present, the first thing we need to do is make sure we get you back in your body so that you can be safe and realize that maybe there's a time and a place to address the trauma, but I need you here and safe when you want to be. So that, I think, is the biggest difference when we're first working with somebody right after a crisis.
That makes total sense, and thank you for providing that perspective. I've heard that trauma can also differ whether the individual has experienced it with other people, right? So that it takes on a different face, whether it's a pandemic or an earthquake, or, as I mentioned, a terrorist attack. How does this affect a client's treatment plan?
I think that goes kind of to the art of therapy, is trying to figure out between the practitioner and the client, and if it's a child, the parent, the whole family system, or whoever is part of that family system, is helping us figure out sort of let's have a few sessions maybe to figure out what we're hearing about what's going on, about what it feels like to be in your skin right now. And then let's start figuring out maybe how to prioritize things, right? And so sometimes also like there's multiple traumas, right? And so something like a pandemic or a seemingly minor trauma can kick off all this stuff from underlying bigger T traumas, right? And so you're trying to figure that out with somebody about where do we want to start?
Got it.
Yeah, what's important now?
So let's get into the Catholic Charities surge that we've seen related to pandemic cases and the entire environment in which we live in society now. Can you help us get some greater perspective on how the number of clients has risen over the past 3 and 4 years prior to the pandemic and what we're seeing now?
Well, the desire for mental health services never been higher. I mean, I think part of that happened a little bit with the expansion of health insurance through the Affordable Care Act, which recognized that mental health or behavioral health services were important and should be covered by insurance, all insurance, whether or not it was public aid or whether or not it's your commercial employer-based insurance. So that sort of started changing the trend. And when people knew that maybe they could get some coverage to support them with their mental health. So we sort of started seeing creeping numbers with access, right?
Right.
And then what happened is that as a society, we've sort of decreased stigma around mental health. I think a lot more people are open to the idea that we have an internal dialogue. It's often not kind. It's built around survival, and that we're trying to learn how to have healthy habits so that we take care of it and that we honor what's our experiences so that we can sort of achieve more of our optimal health and maybe not continue patterns that we didn't think we benefited from.
Ellen, talk to us about your team, your amazing team of counselors, and how they've had to adapt to this greater need for therapy within Catholic Charities and their own resilience or their struggles. Help us get an accurate depiction of that.
Well, I think we're doing better than we were during the pandemic. I think it was incredible. We have a team of about 25 at the time, and bigger across the agency. I mean, there were about 75 of us. And but my own particular team I can speak to about, we were experiencing the pandemic and we had never provided telehealth services before. So we had to learn this new way of interacting. We weren't even sure for us, whether we could work with children online. And then if so, how? And then trying to figure out, when we figured out that piece of the puzzle about how to engage people from their home, then how do we figure out, then people started showing up all the time because they didn't have barriers around transportation. They didn't have the barriers of after school activities or family events. And so attendance was incredibly high, and which was great for treatment, but also it was a lot on everybody. Of course, I think the need was also incredible. I mean, folks were going into psychiatric hospitals. We were calling the hotline a lot because there was an increase in domestic violence, which meant that there was an increase in probably physical abuse and maybe sexual abuse that's happening in the home. That's not getting caught maybe by the regular school systems. So now that we're sort of creeping out of that pandemic, I think we're all getting a breath and trying to kind of now figure out well, where am I now, right? Because we've taken some of the intensity of the pandemic, but it's not over.
Right. we're still going through it. We're gonna take this opportunity to give you a breath. We're gonna throw it to commercial. Ellen, stand by with us because there's more to talk with you about the behavioral health programs within Catholic Charities. I'm Phil Zepeda. This is the Voice of Charity on Catholic Chicago. We'll be right back.
Join us every Monday through Friday at this time for Catholic Chicago. You can stream our programs live or listen to past programs.
Catholic Charities Refugee Resettlement Program has been
We are at the Most Blessed Trinity Parish Food Pantry in Waukegan.
And here we care for people in need. There was definitely an uptick in the needs for services.
We doubled our volume after COVID hit, from servicing about 250 families a week to about 500 a week. We supply bread, tortillas, vegetables, milk, cheese, butter, proteins, fish, chicken, eggs.
Well, the annual Catholic Appeal has been a tremendous help to us, especially over the past year and a half.
Without the annual Catholic Appeal, we might have to close our doors. Our parish is the largest one in the Archdiocese, but is very poor. We think about food and we think about nourishment, but we also nourish the soul, provide that connection to humanity.
The good works here are made possible through the annual Catholic Appeal. Make your gift at annualcatholicappeal.com.
Welcome back to the Voice of Charity. I'm Phil Zepeda with Catholic Charities. I'm here talking with my colleague Ellen Tannenbaum, who's the director of Catholic Charities Youth Counseling Programs. Ellen, great to have you here. We've been talking a lot about the behavioral health programs within Catholic Charities and the rise that we've seen during and in these strange phase days of the pandemic right now. Ellen, talk to us more about the length of time that we see our clients. I'm sure it spans the gamut and nothing necessarily even characterized as an average, but let us know about the length of time that we're working with individuals and families.
Well, I'd say we have an average about 6 months, but I think, because of our long history with child welfare and some of the very complicated nature of youth who've come to us because of severe and chronic trauma, we have some of those clients for a number of years.
Yeah.
But I would say most folks are in and out in about 6 months.
Tell us, about, in addition to therapy, other ways that clients can help in their own recovery process too. I imagine giving them tools and behaviors that they can address. What might some of those be that you could share with our audience?
Well, I think the ones that, thanks to TikTok and social media, a lot of people are pretty aware about some sort of healthy habits they can have. Sleep is the number one thing that you can do for your mental health, is make sure that you're having good quality sleep, and talking to your healthcare provider if you're not having good sleep. So that, what I would say, is the number one. Also, healthy nutrition, exercise, we know increases dopamine levels, and so that can make you feel pretty good. And then finding out what personally helps you de-stress or fills you up spiritually. And that can be prayer, that can be connecting with friends, that can be reading a good book, taking a bath. I mean, for everybody, that's different. But we do hope that we can try to figure out how to increase people's strengths and their ability to savor the positive while you're working on hard stuff too.
Yeah, and those are all good reminders for all of us, whether we're in a therapy regimen or not, to take good care of ourselves with sleep and being social and in conversation and dialogue with family and friends. You mentioned the shift to telehealth, right? With doing counseling via Zoom and the strange environment that everyone in the business world and therapy world was now encountering as a way to deliver business and have these conversations. And the strange dynamic of that. I want to get a little bit more into that. Are people more willing to connect via Zoom or whatever digital tool that they have, because it's just so incredibly prevalent now? I wonder how it's facing itself longer term within the behavioral health world.
Well, so we have a couple of different platforms that are HIPAA compliant, so private for
Yes.
folks, that we're able to offer people who want counseling via telehealth. And for obvious reasons, most being, transportation, if somebody can find a private space where they can access telehealth, a lot of folks love it because they can eliminate any barriers that they would have in childcare or in transportation costs associated, especially with fuel being so expensive right now, even CTA costs. So a lot of folks are still preferring telehealth. I think the challenge is sometimes clinically we don't think that's appropriate, and so we're working. Right. Then we work with those families on figuring out how you should come in, because maybe we're not getting the results we need. We're going to try it in person, see if we get something different.
Ellen, what percentage do you think is telehealth versus in person?
I'd say 60% still are telehealth services.
That's pretty tremendous.
It's tremendous.
And profound. I'd love to hear if you can share, obviously with a good deal of anonymity, any client stories that are remarkable to you of individuals or families that we've helped struggling through the pandemic for whatever reason, and you've listed a myriad of these. I'd love to hear what's touched your heart and you might share with our listeners.
Well, when I came to Catholic Charities, the one thing that was remarkable was the experience of our staff to deal with really complicated trauma. And certainly we have families who are just, I hate to say just, but sort of experiencing the stress of changes in their family system, and they need support around that. But what struck me was that we had a child that we worked with who was raised in a cage, and he was largely nonverbal because of that extreme example, right? Extreme trauma. And so we worked with him for a number of years, sort of non-verbally, and through the use of food and nurturing, and sort of worked up to where he was getting better at sort of being able to express his needs and not have sort of tantrums, sort of develop some age-appropriate skills. And while he's an extreme, he's not that uncommon. That we have a number of clients that because on the youth side, that their development was stunted because of what they experienced in childhood. And so they're really coming to us after they're getting in trouble at school because they act weird or difficult or out of control. And our therapists come in and try to really work with whoever is part of that child's system. And in this case, that was a child who had already had to move into a residential facility because of the extreme behaviors that he had. And so we really worked with his residential home to also support him, and maybe not get so upset. And so he was able to graduate into a what we think of as a more traditional foster home, and move into a family. And then, of course, we disconnected, but where our hope was that he ended up being adopted.
You know, Ellen, I don't know how you can't hear that story and not be affected. My goodness, when you said, raised in a cage, wow, just the what a horrible, horrific situation for that child to be put in. I imagine that it puts a strain even on the most hardened counselor and staff member. Talk to us a little about the resilience of your own team in the face of challenges of like hearing that case.
Well, I mean, we talk about what we call vicarious trauma, the trauma that you experience from hearing traumatic things, right? And traumatic things sometimes all day long. I think that was partly, that can happen with working with clients on an everyday basis. I think that was compounded when you're having a traumatic experience in your own life. And so we work with our therapists to really, we offer them weekly supervision to sort of really talk about sort of how their families are affecting them, what it's bringing out in them, making sure that our therapists are connected to their own therapists, should they need to, so they can make sure that they're, keeping things separate, and that they're attending to their best self. And so, we offer the same tools, which is, are you doing body movement? Are you sleeping? Are you eating? Are you taking time off? So that you can sort of, the phrase is always, do you have the oxygen mask on before you try to help somebody else? Because you do want to make sure that you're in a healthy, grounded space if you're going to offer grace to somebody else. That's
beautiful wisdom. Let me, as we're wrapping up our show here, if anyone in our audience is suffering, or if they know someone who is suffering from mental health concerns, certainly Catholic Charities can be a resource for them within our own programs, or for information or referral to other programs that may be more suited to their needs. What's the best way for people to contact Catholic Charities if they want to learn more about our mental health programs or trauma-informed therapy?
Well, we don't offer 24-hour crisis assistance. So I would encourage anybody who's feeling unsafe to call 911 or 988, which is the new number. But if you're looking for sort of outpatient therapy, you can reach us at 312-655-7191. 312-655-7191. You can also email us now at youthcounseling@catholiccharities.net. And we are able to direct you to whatever program that we're going to try to find the best program and fastest program. So we will ask you some questions to make sure that we are finding any and all services that are available to you.
Ellen, thank you so much for joining us today. I applaud you and everyone on our behavioral health teams at Catholic Charities in the many ways that you rise to the challenges over the past few years and offer our clients a trusted path for recovery. So thank you so much for joining us. We invite you all again to come back to us at the Voice of Charity. For now, this is Phil Zepeda, and we thank you for tuning in and believing in the mission of Catholic Charities. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Phil.